Hi, this is Bill Hader.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Bill Hader.
Welcome to another episode of We Heart Hater. I am Deej Behrens.
And I'm your co-host and 2007 douchebag of the year, fourth place runner-up, Casey the Deech Killingsworth.
Now on the SNL side of our alternating episodes, this is season 33, episode 2 of Seth Rogen and Spoon. We're going to have Casey take the lead because I'm still kind of recovering from bronchitis. So take it away, Casey.
Seth Rogen, y'all know him, he's a big comedy star, and let's get into it. At first, I was a bit hesitant to cover this particular episode because I remember a specific quote from Bill in the updated 2015 version of the Live from New York book. He said something to the effect of, some weeks you think you'll have good weeks and you won't, and vice versa. One week we'll have a host like Seth Rogen, who's a friend of mine who I've worked before, and I won't be in anything. And then another week, someone like Taylor Swift will come along and host, and I'll think, well, her music's not my cup of tea, but you have a wonderful time with that person unexpectedly. Then I looked at the rundown and the sketch appearance spreadsheet that Deej put together for this podcast, and Bill was actually in a lot of this, so let's get to it. There's a lot of ground to cover, so naturally, Bill's first appearance is in Seth's monologue. He comes out and says what a big deal it is for him to host SNL because he was a huge comedy nerd growing up. I know he doesn't look like that. He says he was in two big movies that summer, Knocked Up and Superbad. We've already covered Bill's part in one of those. And he mentions that Superbad was a movie for which the script he and his writing partner Evan Goldberg began writing when they were 13. And they always dreamed that maybe someday Superbad could get made and it could be a big enough hit that I get to host SNL. So they got to writing his fantasy SNL monologue, mostly just details outlandish fantasy life that like every 13-year-old has in their head. He set it up and Seth just put it to paper, pulled out some crappy loose leaf paper. The Wayne's World reference instantly dates this. Party on, Wayne. So I guess he was 13 in like 92 or something. There wasn't a whole lot to this either material-wise, but it gets by on sort of a geeky, pathetic charm that Seth exudes, just him outlining every single beat of the impossible dream life he had envisioned for himself in middle school. He was driving his Lamborghini there, and he said out loud, "Things sure have worked out for me." "You're right," my Lamborghini responded, because he assumed all cars in the future could talk, which, now that people have GPS and smartphones in their cars, that's a semi-reality. He goes on to envision his life. Jessica Winthorpe, the most beautiful girl in school, fell in love with him the moment she heard him tell a hilarious sex joke in the hallway, even though they've never met or spoken before. Through all the trying times in his life, when he had a 2-foot growth spurt in eighth grade and became incredibly muscular. In the ninth grade, when RZA and the Wu-Tang Clan called him up to not just join, but lead the Wu-Tang Clan. In 2000, when the Zarkons invaded the Earth and the Space Wars got started, which he was named the general of the Intergalactic Army to lead the fight. So he skips over several pages of that and one page that's just new ideas for Magic the Gathering cards, and then skips over to dedicating this SNL episode to Mike Banning, an older kid who used to make fun of his X-Men backpack, because it's a shame how his face and body exploded in the Space Wars and how his football skills were useless in an army that now prizes video game skills over athletic ability. This is when Bill comes in. Seth introduces his best friend, Steven Seagal, who was just Bill dressed as Steven Seagal, and I like how he breaks character for a moment and then just suddenly snaps back into it when Seth says, thanks for doing this, Bill, it's awesome. And
Thanks so much for doing this, Bill.
Hey, no worries, man.
Awesome, man. Yeah. So,
Bill asks Steven has a message for the audience, which is,
Seth Rogen is my best friend, and he's totally not a virgin.
and that was probably the best possible beat to end this on, even though you might find it a bit odd that even at 13, Seth Rogen would be this big SNL nerd who would still look up to Steven Seagal after having presumably seen his infamous 1991 episode, let alone liking him in general, knowing what we know about him now, or even then. I don't know when it was that Frank Dukes exposed him to be this big fraud, but I think that was pretty early on. But still, this is a monologue I enjoy now as much as I did then.
It's always fun when people in the now are commenting on the way they thought the future would be. Like, there's a great series of Warner Brother cartoons done by Chuck Jones of these are things we'll have in the future, and seeing it they thought we'd have by now. Definitely interesting commentary. Like you mentioned, breaking characters for a moment and immediately getting right back into it. He's really good at that. Seth is a fine Canadian from my part of the world, from the Vancouver area. It's nice to see a good Canadian boy hosting a show that was created by a good Canadian, well, good-ish Canadian man.
That's another reason I figured you'd be excited to cover at least both the Seth Rogen's episode during this era. Next, Bill's on quite a hot streak, quite a good run early on in this episode, because he appears in the post-monologue ad parody for the Veritas Ultrasound HD with the latest in high-tech ultrasound video technology, expecting fathers like Jason Sudeikis can now enjoy the sharpest, most high-resolution images of the unborn baby currently in their wife's womb, played by Kristen Wiig, at the doctor's office, while simultaneously watching a movie filled with explosions because there's a picture-in-picture setting, and they can also see what their fetus looks like wearing the helmet of their favorite football team, thanks to the future fan option. To me, this felt like a rather unique of its time premise. This may have been still in between the eras of plasma screen TVs being prized and the HD DVD versus Blu-ray wars starting up. Smartphones would, because the iPhone had just come out. It was more the writing and performances that really helped put this over and make it feel a bit more evergreen. This was, if not the first, one of Bill's early pitchman roles on SNL, and Fred was very peripheral as a doctor, so as soon as Jason complains about the picture quality of this ultrasound, I like how Bill just enters with his very first line.
Ultrasound. Ugh. For years, expectant fathers have been forced to fake interest in crude, low-quality, grainy images of their unborn children.
Before he starts naming the features of this, he has another great line.
We live in a high-definition world. If you could see an NFL lineman's breath in a January playoff game, you shouldn't have to ask a doctor where your baby's eyes are.
And the details of 180p display resolution, a flat panel liquid crystal screen tickled me. Jason's standout line here is, now that's a penis when looking at the ultrasound. I like the running theme of him being more concerned / impressed with these minor details in his baby's actual health or whether they're visiting a good doctor. And Kristen gave a solid, underrated performance here, contrasting with Jason's misplaced excitability with her genuine concern over the baby's health and suppressed frustration with her husband's sheer incompetence / just gleeful detachment. I love how she tensely responded to,
Who said having a baby couldn't be exciting?
No one said that.
Well, Bill is pitchman. He just has that voice that works so well for it. How it's the early days of HD, especially since the first SNL in HD was Bill's debut episode back in season 31. Jason and Kristen always working well together. Her annoyance and all he cares about is the picture quality and does the kid have a penis. At the end, they have the kid doing it's not the devil horn, a very male kind of thing to want. But I can understand though, because ultrasounds are very blurry. It seems that they cater this more towards the men rather than the women's side of things. Bill, well, he has that voice, so works always well for me.
Okay, and Bill's even in the next live segment, the first post-monologue sketch. It's the 2007 National Douchebag Championship, hosted by Blaine Savage, played by Jason Sudeikis. And Jason does play a great host in this, but at the same time, he hits certain beats in his dialogue a little bit hard in a way that made this feel a teeny bit underwritten and kind of ham-fisted at the same time. But that's a minor nitpick. I guess for some portions of the audience, the writers, in this case, Colin Jost and Rob Klein, they thought this may need to have been seen as sort of a basic introduction to the idea of 2007 douchebag male culture, so it didn't bother me that much. I did like him refusing to return the fist bumps to Bill and Seth's characters and telling Will's character to just shut up and cool it when singing Jamiroquai's Virtual Insanity. Blaine Savage hosts this quote-unquote talent competition where the contestants are Jake Hawkins, played by Bill Hader, who is a nightclub manager from New Jersey who loves a good joke. Todd the Deech Deaton, played by Seth Rogen, who is a student from Pennsylvania, hopes to one day compete in Olympic muff diving. Christopher Spanks, played by Will Forte, an activist and street juggler from California. And they each must face a panel of celebrity guest judges, including Sharon Osbourne, played by Amy Poehler, Gene Simmons, played by Fred Armisen, and last year's winner, the 2006 Douchebag of the Year, Gerard, played by Andy Samberg. The winner will take home the commemorative Jared Leto trophy and win a guest spot on Entourage. So, having been around enough in 2007 to see that this was pretty much where a large part of male culture was headed, this sketch tickles me a little. And Bill's character being a nightclub manager is some interesting unintentional foreshadowing. And we talked in our third episode that maybe Bill knew John Mulaney in their pre-SNL days, so maybe he drew on an email that John forwarded to him. His goofy facial expressions and hacky impressions were charming enough that I could see why this character placed third here. For his talent portion, he sang the lyrics to California Girls while doing impressions of Borat, Austin Powers, and Ace Ventura.
Is nice. Will make you horny, baby. All righty then.
And keep in mind, this being 2007, Katy Perry wasn't famous yet. She hadn't even released her first album. This leads me to believe that he would have been singing David Lee Roth's cover of the Beach Boys original from 1985. The idea of someone singing a song doing multiple impressions of movie characters, doesn't that feel a more YouTube-coded thing today? Like, an aspiring voice actor like Brock Baker make a video of, and these days it probably would be the Katy Perry version, and it would be cartoon characters instead of movie characters. I mean, this sketch may have been the best use of Amy's Sharon Osbourne impression I've seen on the show. Better than even just the various Osbourne's parodies the show was doing about 5 years before this, or the one Celebrity Jeopardy sketch from season 30 when Will hosted. Seth Rogen's character fit this sketch well enough as a charmless, misogynistic tool. I mean, his outfit was like, it was a John Cena hat with sunglasses, or like an Ed Hardy trucker's cap, and a Big Johnson t-shirt straight out of 1996. Seth's talent was just hitting on a woman in the audience, asking if she wanted to see a picture of the twins, and showing her a cell phone photo of his testicles. I mean, I liked every other way Amy described Seth's character, except mentioning him being brought up on date charges. She also said he wears shower shoes everywhere. He calls everyone bro Cephas. Fred does Gene Simmons in a way that only really works on a visual, visceral level, because he mostly just looks like him and says things that are only a teeny bit more disgusting than what I believe a real Gene Simmons says. But other than that, something about the voice he uses this seems odd to me. The winner of this competition is Forte's character Christopher Spanks, who, for his talent, plays ultimate frisbee while on a Segway while singing the music of Jamiroquai. Amy says he showed us such impressive doucherty, which is something she stumbled on so much. I'd really love to see what Wally put on that cue card. Andy Samberg's character Gerard, with like long blondish hair, a jester's cap, and a turtleneck, who is last year's winner, but isn't particularly douchey as much as he just says and does things that are so intensely Lonely Island, Andy Samberg specific, that I think maybe Yorman Akiva punched this up on Thursday from Colin Jost and Rob Klein's script. So he's always distracted by something. First, he was straight up jamming on this pizzone. Yeah, I remember liking those things quite a bit during that brief window of time before COVID when Pizza Hut actually bought them back. And hey, quick sidebar here. Whenever you do go to Pizza Hut, what you should do is just get their small, round, personal pan pizzas because they cook those with the least amount of grease and garlic. Get either some medium buffalo wings or just a cup of medium buffalo sauce on the side and put those on the pizza with some Parmesan because that's amazing. And one other point, he was putting a single stray braid in his hair using a Native American bead he picked up in the Bob Marley section of Hot Topic, which is just an infuriating combination of words but feels very Ross Trent coded. He squeezes out some gorp for his main man Ferret Bueller, which I think is a recycled season 30 joke. He says Bill's character was hilarious. .com. Seth's character he's a jazz. He should just keep on doing the Bartman. And Will's character just says, on the cereal tip, I gots to have my pops. And that's the douchebag of the year competition.
I always loved Jersey Bill. Not that he really spoke much. Just a correction there. He was reciting the lyrics to California Girl. He wasn't actually singing. It's a nice, quick little quick impression mini parade from Bill. He worked so well at that because he has a very similar kind of face to Jim Carrey. He would, too bad that they did the Carrey family reunion after he had left. And hello, Bill Cheekbones. The makeup department really highlighted those. They were like sharp and on point. Of course, who doesn't love a good frosty tip hairdo? I would wear it, but it's just very much a commentary, very much a hairstyle of the time. The ferret was adorable. I think the issue with Fred's Gene Simmons is Fred has a tender voice. Gene is a very deep baritone. Definitely with the makeup and the facial expressions and stuff he does from what I've seen of Gene Simmons in interviews and when he had that reality show on A&E for a while. But it was a good sketch. It wasn't the greatest of the night, but it had its charming moments, and just the general concept was pretty good.
Bill isn't quite as rubber-faced as Jim Carrey, but he is just as expressive facially. He's even in the very next sketch after this too, which is just called Big Kids, with Mr. and Mrs. Triggs, played by Bill and Amy, overindulging their grotesquely large and unattractive twins, Jeremy, played by Seth Rogen, and Stacia, played by Wig, and their need to perform and show off to the disgust of their own adult friends. Will and Maya as a couple, Sudeikis and Armisen as a possible couple. They didn't really explain that, but it wasn't worth explaining too much. This got off to a fine start with Maya, Will, Fred, and Jason reacting in stunned shock to the photo of the twins' growth spurt. It's one of those sketches that relied a little bit too much on just a pan across every character in the room's just shocked expressions, which they can lean on a bit like a crutch. Seth was great in this and played this well, and so was Kristen. I didn't quite like I said we as a catchphrase, and even if she was a little stiff, she played this great. Don't have a huge problem with this sketch or Kristen's performance in it. It feels like the start of a dangerous trend in this era of, where Kristen would just play a lot of either loud or very spazzy characters. They'd make her do that on overdrive for the next few seasons, so it was hard to fully get into that. Bill and Amy just played very cheery and effectual parents off them as well. But this did have some big laugh moments. I mean, my second biggest laugh of this was the visual of Kristen wearing a giant 3-piece drum set over her shoulders and just tapping them with a complete lack of rhythm, like she was practicing some kind of Native American war chant or something. And Seth badly mangles the words to Amy Winehouse's Rehab into a tiny pink Barbie-ish microphone attached to an oddly shaped boombox / tape player. The next thing they do is show off this new robot toy that looks straight out of the 50s. So they just press buttons. It makes typical sci-fi toy robot laser gun sounds while Wig just dances with just her arms, which was all right, but didn't stand out much for me. And then they record themselves reenacting a scene from Harry Potter where I guess Harry and Hermione tell Professor McGonagall that Harry has pimples on his teeth. I mean, that was a close third, but it kind of set up the actual biggest laugh of the sketch, where Amy catches Will trying to jump out the window.
Let me see it.
Jerry, we're on the 15th floor.
I'm well aware of that.
Well, I'm the opposite, where I love the I said we bit. That was my biggest little running joke. It's another reaction shot parade, but the expressions people had were pretty funny. It just goes to prove that parents have their own little blinders on when it comes to their own kids.
The vacation was wonderful. The twins had such a great time. Oh, there's a picture of us. Oh, look at us, the four of us taking on that cruise ship.
Jeremy and Stassi have gotten so big, you won't even recognize them anymore.
Yeah, they're adorable.
Oh. Oh, my.
Hey, Roman. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. Let's have a look. Let's see what we got here.
Oh, wow.
Oh, man.
Wow, they've gotten so much bigger.
They're both just very so proud of them. Good goofy charm between him and Amy. They definitely played their characters pretty well, especially Seth. We had the too short shirt, really thick Coke bottle glasses, so visually definitely got the point across. Bill basically plays more of a support character, but hey, that's a very important thing to do. Very much like Phil Hartman did in the Van Down by the River sketch. But it makes you wonder, like, what exactly are their parents on that makes them so oblivious? Especially singing Rehab?
I mean, Amy Winehouse and that Rehab song were pretty much everywhere in 07. We'll get another reference to it later this season. You couldn't escape it. Although SNL did manage to. She was supposed to be the musical guest for the previous episode, hosted by LeBron James, but she couldn't get a passport, so they had to replace her and reschedule her for an episode hosted by The Rock, which we won't cover because we can't, because it didn't happen, because that was the start of the WGA writer strike, so that whole episode had to be canceled, as well as like the next 4 or 5 months worth of episodes we can't cover because they don't exist. Then, Bill goes like the entire middle of this episode without being seen, but he shows up in the bottom third in 2 of the last 3 sketches, the first being America's First Colonists, focusing on Stone Town, which is presented as a History Channel documentary. Steve Higgins has an opening voiceover to this. It's kind of cute.
You're watching the History Channel, which probably means you're not that happy with the present.
This tells the story of, it's another early colonial settlement, like Jamestown, Virginia, was one of the first colonies, and then right after that, there was another colony, Stonetown, founded by a colonial settler named John Stone, played by Seth Rogen. It's a failing settlement plagued with problems, but he just came back to tell all his other fellow settlers, Forte, Hayter, Polar, and Thompson. Keenan shows up at one point. He just came back from a meeting with a native tribe who showed him this special magical crop that you can plant and smoke that makes everything all the better, because Seth Rogen's a well-known stoner, because it's pot. Get it? Wig is the only one not on board with this. It boosts everyone else's morale in spite of their dwindling food supply and lack of defense or winter preparation, which may have led to the town's demise. Bill not only narrates this, but he has the first line of the sketch.
We live in a swamp. Disease abounds. Our crops are withered. We're going to perish in this godless land.
Forte says, well, when John Stone gets back, hopefully he'll have good news, but he comes back.
Hey, everybody. Hey, what's up, man? Hey, how's it going, man? What's up, guys?
John Stone, where have you been? Your reckless leadership has this colony on the brink of ruin.
Look, I know I haven't been the best leader, but I have some awesome news.
The natives show me this magical crop. It's like tobacco, but better. We see Bill and Jason is trying to, with 2 flat stones, spark a bong that Bill has fashioned out of a musket that's not quite working. We hear it fire off screen, and then we cut to Bill, a shot fired through his hat. So that was fun. And earlier, they're both trying to lick ears of corn the long way like they're popsicles, and Amy just dances bounces around and hands Wig a flower when she comes back. Keenan comes in asking Seth for a dime bag while he's playing an air lute. We also see the invention of the hacky sack from Seth, and when Kristen Wiig points out that they're out of food, he points out that they ordered out Indian food delivered by Fred Armisen as a native, which I didn't care for that much either until Fred's basically a Native American DoorDasher. First thing he says when he shows up is, "Which one of you guys is constantly stroking?" That got me. There wasn't much to this either. I mean, I guess this was just the obligatory sketch they had to do this week to play up their host's big pothead image, because pot equals funny, especially if you're from the Boulder, Colorado area like me. Seth played his part well, so did Will, and Kristen played a great stern voice of sober reason and concern. There wasn't too much here.
BC is also rather famous for its various pot strains even before it was legal, which I'm sure Seth had consumed much of in his youth. The musket, there's the bong. This is a nitpicky thing. A lute does not have a neck that long. It's a little longer than a ukulele. Christian's character just being the one to try to bring everybody down and hopefully back to reality. They had the rocks and munchies.
The only clue to their town's mysterious demise.
Cannabis or ham is a really good crop because Seth is known as the stoner and still is to this day. It is the obligatory toast a stoner, therefore you must do the stoner thing sketch, so I've seen worse.
I guess the writers thought that guitars may not have been invented yet, but still, if they thought of that, they probably also think, well, playing a tiny air lute wouldn't play as well on camera because it's so tiny compared to a guitar.
But I did say it was nitpicky, so, you know.
Yes, the writers must not have been. If you're writing a sketch about stoners aren't nitpicky. The second to last sketch of this episode is Bill's last appearance. Rolf and the Swedish Chef. Seth Rogen is Rolf the dog from the Muppet Show, and Andy Samberg is the Swedish Chef, which Andy revealed that he did audition with. This is only the second appearance of this character. First was during a brief commercial within a sketch. It was the Food Network show Smorgasbord from Scarlett Johansson's season 31 episode. Bill was Scarlett's comatose husband, which, aside from being in the background of Fly High Duluth, those were his only appearances in that episode, and he had no lines in either, which is why we didn't cover it. But this was a sketch. Andy debuted his Swedish Chef impression in a commercial for Swedish Chef ringtones, advertising his cover of Axel F. This sketch started sort of the cinematic universe, but the sketch universe of SNL's late aughts Muppet Show parodies. Because, well, first of all, this also starts off just on home base stage where they do the monologue, no other set pieces except for a piano that Seth plays. That was charming. I like the quaint little season 1 and 2, 75, 76 throwback. That was the last time they just did a sketch without a set on home base. It was the second one of those season 1, season 2 throwbacks we got. Seth, as Rolf, wants to sing The Rainbow Connection, but Andy Swedish Chef says he doesn't want to because that song now has too many painful memories associated with a Vegas hotel room encounter with Celine Dion, where he had to sing Rainbow Connection the whole time. So instead, they agreed to sing Bobby Darin's Beyond the Sea with backing from Janice on tambourine, played by Maya Rudolph, Zoot on saxophone, played by Fred Armisen, Bill as Animal on the drums. Most of these characters would also show up in Seth Rogen's second episode the following season and in Blake Lively's monologue in season 35. It was fun. The cast pulled this off well. Seth, Bill, and Andy all had great natural Muppet voices, and they had the right Muppet energy to pull this off. Bill crushed it with that wild drum solo.
Take it, animal! Ah, yeah, 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 yeah!
Maya Rudolph even gave off Lorraine Newman vibes. At this point, I had seen some of the 70s Muppet Show, seen a little bit more of mid-90s Muppets Tonight. It had been a few years since I'd seen the actual Muppet Show, which is still the case, but the Muppets are so universal that you didn't have to have seen them that recently to appreciate this. Maybe it's just the omnipresent cultural osmosis, just one of those pop cultural things that people my age pick up from seeing more parodies of it on other more contemporary comedy shows on our time. But it's nice to have such a charming comfort food sketch near the end of the show like this. And it's also kind of funny how recently it's been announced that Disney has been apparently planning an actual revival of the Muppet Show here in 2026 that will supposedly air on ABC and Hulu about a week, probably less than a week after you're listening to this. That new revival of the Muppet Show does also involve Seth Rogen and Maya Rudolph and Sabrina Carpenter. Serendipitous timing there.
I grew up with the Muppet Show. Sesame Street started, I think, the year after I was born, so this is a perfect time capsule thing for me. And Seth Rolf is very strong because he naturally just has that Rolf kind of voice. Rolf was always my dad's favorite. Maya made the perfect Janice, who would later be portrayed by Michaela Watkins. Fred, absolutely perfect Zoot, just completely transformed. But Bill as Animal always makes me laugh. Although I'm pretty sure he wasn't playing the drum. They probably had the drummer of the band playing behind him, but he faked it well. Totally gets into the character. Even eventually after his drum solo, fuzz from the headpiece he's wearing is like sticking to his mouth. He's just going on. And the next time they do this whole Muppet thing with Seth is one of my favorite sketches of all time. Because who can forget
Boom, boom, sniff, sniff!
But yeah, I love Bill as Animal. Almost as much as I love Jersey Bill. They come pretty close to each other.
We got plenty of time to discuss the other moments from this episode Bill was not in, so let's start with another oddly timed cold open from season 33. A message from Kevin Federline, played by, again, Andy Samberg, and Keenan's voiceover says that much better than I could. Britney Spears' then recent ex-husband, which this feels like something that was originally supposed to be an update commentary at dress rehearsal, but for some reason they decided to hastily move it to the top of the show to replace a scrapped cold open that didn't work. In my research on this episode, I couldn't find any evidence indicating that was the case, so I guess this was always supposed to be the episode's cold open. It starts off with Andy's K-Fed listing various ways that he's rocking it right now. He had an album come out last year, so you can get that. He's doing some new dances, hip-hop and nightclubs, and in his living room, some experimental stuff. And he's suing FedEx for stealing his name, so that'll be an easy paycheck. And he also just won custody of the 2 children he fathered with Britney. He believes now that it's legally proven that Kevin Federline is slightly more responsible than Britney Spears, and his lawyers put that in the Constitution and whatnot, so he shares his own expert parenting tips, such as you gotta feed your kids, not just once a day, but twice a day. Kids are a big magnet for dads, single dads. You can imagine women coming up to a guy walking a dog in the park. Imagine a baby or two. The one line that works for me is that he says,
"You'll be getting laid faster than you can say, hey, can someone watch these kids while I go hang out with this strange lady I just met?" Trust me, it works good.
And get him to be your babysitter if you're going to Vegas for a week, because he's good at several things that he believes make up babysitting, including singing lullabies, telling stories, bartending, balloon animals, calling poison control, waiting for poison control to show up, and then convincing poison control that, yes, you really are calling about a separate, unrelated incident when you have to call them again 2 hours later. Or you could get another babysitter to watch your kids, and he could go to Vegas with you. This ends on a very strange line that makes this age very weirdly. He says he's like the new Bill Cosby. He's really funny, he's good with kids, and he's black. None of those things are things people think of when they think of Bill Cosby. Now, there wasn't much to this writing-wise. I mean, Andy certainly had the charisma to put this over in a way only he could, which comes out when he sings a Chili's jingle. And I guess he gave us Lazy Sunday, so that alone would make Sandberg overqualified to play Kevin Federline. He's actually playing this less as a generic dumb white guy acting black like Ike Barinholtz did on Mad TV. That was all over the place, and more is just doing a very laser-focused K-Fed impression. I had no problem with this in spite of just the material being lost to the time fog. I doubt that this was that slow of a week for political news, but it is nice to get a quick break from political cold opens whenever we can get.
Not much, other than I was happy to see a non-political cold open. It was okay. It wasn't anything special. A lot of the other stuff that happened during the episode didn't really resonate that much with me. I have to readily admit.
We got MacGruber coming up next, so we got to talk about my main man Groobs. So this is the third ever MacGruber. So we've only seen him twice in the past season. The first was with Jeremy Piven. This one is just MacGruber's vanity and fear of aging distracting him from defusing the bomb. When we first see him, he's wearing a bandana tied around his head, and he can't let Maya or Seth see that when it falls off. So he makes him turn around to look for any other random items that he could use. And by the time he ties it back on, it's only 2 seconds and it blows up. It gave off slight Rocka Love era Bret Michaels vibes, and this kind of continues a slight theme to this episode that the Kevin Federline thing and the douchebag sketch sort of established. It was just goofily dumb enough to work for me, as most MacGrubers are. Next one, he appears to be in full-blown midlife crisis mode. He's had a noticeable amount of plastic surgery and hair plugs, so he's still kind of going bald, but he has like puffy collagen lips and a chiseled chin. That's a funny visual. Apparently, he started a relationship with a much younger woman named Taylor, played by Kristen Wiig, who he met in a hookah bar in Marina Del Rey, and he whispers to Seth and Maya, "I'm 25, just go with it." Tries to convince Taylor that they're his parents. The mention of a hookah bar tickled me as someone who's been to both of the hookah bars that, again, existed in Boulder during my sophomore year in college after this. The biggest laugh of this was when he says to Seth and Maya, "Mom, hand me that thing." "Okay, MacGruber, we're on the way." "Dad, hand me that." "Sure, son." Kristen gets a text that their friend Randy got them Dave Matthews tickets for tonight, and Will's a bit disappointed that no one else thinks that that's as tight as she and Kristen do. He doesn't repeat that too much. It's MacGruber, it's short, so it doesn't get too old. That was a high point. And then in the third one, his plastic surgery cut him off, so now he has to go to Guatemala or someplace south of the border in South America. He regrets it with every fiber of his being. Most of this, Will Forte spends turned into a corner, facing away from everyone and just growling at them. So I kind of like the creepy Marathon Man-esque tone this took, asking for a mirror. Also, they're trapped in a control room in a monastery, which was a nice touch as a haunting. Ambient choir music helped sell the odd horror vibes of this. I also liked how this was a complete 180-degree turn from your standard midlife crisis MacGruber, but these are short. There's very little to say about them, except this ends with Gruber deciding that his new, only minorly deformed look is not so bad, and then there's an explosion.
You gotta shout out to the makeup department. Plastic surgeries looks that he did, especially the first one. They gave him a butt chin. You get that initial shock. Kind of looks good from some angles, but other times it doesn't really look good. Definitely get the Bret Michaels thing. Yes, I admit I did watch both seasons of Rock of Love. Tried to convince them to just go with the age that he's saying because he's just trying to be young. What was the last? Oh, yeah, and one of the running jokes in this is they're always in a control room. Juxtaposition of monastery and control room. So ridiculous. And the very last look, basically his face is melting off. So the big star, I think, of this whole series, this particular series of MacGruber, was the makeup.
And there's also a message from Tennessee Senator Fred Thompson, played by Darrell Hammond, who was running for president this time, but everyone pretty much got the accurate impression that he doesn't really want to be president. His heart's not in it. As he says, his poll numbers are going down faster than Senator Larry Craig in a Minneapolis men's room. So he's going to draw on his previous experience of working with stand-ins and stunt doubles on movie and TV sets, where they just get a body double to take your place for lighting and camera blocking when they don't need your face on screen, or they don't need a close-up of you, and then you can just go sleep in your trailer. Fred Thompson is bringing in his old Law & Order co-star Sam Waterston, played by Fred Armisen, as his stunt candidate, who will do all his campaign stops while he sleeps in his trailer because he really doesn't like interacting with the public that much. I kind of get thinking, why would someone want to leave a career in show business, even a minor one, to take political office? But I don't remember much. I don't think anyone else remembers much from Fred Thompson's 2008 presidential campaign. Obviously, it was very short-lived and unsuccessful. He was a Republican. But from this and other political material in this episode, I gathered that, he was lazy, he didn't want to be there around strangers. He must have had his own Jeb Bush please clap moment, because this begins and ends with Darrell Hammond as Fred Thompson saying, "What are you, damn hands broken? Give me a round of applause," which I think he actually said. So there's no doubt that contributed to the demise of his campaign. Even not knowing this, there's not much to find funny here, but at least you get to see them use Darrell Hammond in a new impression, a new political impression that isn't Dick Cheney or Chris Matthews before they would stop having trouble finding political figures for him to play when they figured out that they can have him play John McCain, who actually did run a more successful campaign than Fred Thompson. There's Fred with his bizarre off-base Sam Waterston impression. Once again, that only worked the last two times he did it, when they were portraying him as slightly mentally unstable or weirdly out of place. Because, again, the voice is a little too high and it sounds off. And even talking about this sketch is really, this whole episode up to that point has me feeling like Fred Thompson circa 2007.
Yeah, not a lot, because being Canadian, and I've never seen the episode of Law and Order. I am familiar with Sam Waterston, this other guy as the actor. I'm sure he was part of it, but I've never heard of him. And really, until, when it comes to most political campaigns in the U.S., until recently, a lot of the pre-primary stuff I never really paid attention to, so I don't really have any kind of good reference for the character that he's playing. So I tried to rewatch this again, but then I just gave up like a minute into it. I was like, nope, this does nothing for me.
Right, and we get musical guest Spoon performing The Underdog, and you got your Cherry Bomb, and I don't have a lot to say about this band or these performances. I'll say their sound is pleasant enough, but if you listen closely, you can hear the origins of that whole indie pop, folk, stomp, clap, hey trend of music that would become omnipresent in about 3 more years and go on to plague major prescription drug commercials to this day. So, this is the sound that, over time, morph into Kyle Gordon's "We Will Never Die," the one he does as Cody Red Wing in The Broken Hearts. If you're listening to this, my blog on this episode's probably out for you to read, so I'll include the link to the YouTube link to what I'm talking about there. But this is that sound with a little bit of legit indie alt hipness cred to it before it kind of became a joke. Deej, anything?
Spoon I was never familiar with, but when I first heard about this episode, I originally thought of the band Spoons, which is a Canadian new wave band that I loved back in my youth.
Then we get Mad Joe Dixon, where Maya Rudolph and Kristen Wiig are Delilah and Abigail discussing Delilah's true feelings toward Mad Joe Dixon, played by Seth, until he shows up with a bunch of logs. They discuss their own likes and dislikes, and they decide they're destined for each other. I mean, I got slight Judy Grimes vibes from Wig's performance. Seth's performance made me think, did this sketch get cut from John C. Reilly's episode for the previous season? Other than that, I have no idea what this even was. I couldn't make heads or tails of it. It started out more like it was trying and failing to be a southern version of Tales of Ribaldry. But once Seth started talking about wrapping his balls in hot or cold washcloths, depending on the temperature, it felt like this seriously got away from whoever was writing this, or more likely punching it up on Thursday night. I'll admit that Maya talked about how she likes to find random men's thermoses on work sites and take a poop in there and shake it up. That got me, but the origin of the name Mad Joe being short for Joanne, and also a name he got because he likes to kill people, that was just too dumb. This definitely felt like it was going for a bit of a random vibe, but not LOL, silly, absurd, wacky random, as much as just pointless and irritatingly dumb random, which isn't the kind of random people like. But, Weekend Update's another big centerpiece of this episode. So let's get to that and hopefully end this on a more positive note. I'll talk about Seth's jokes. I liked Bush vetoing child health care insurance because he hates kids. Him being accused by Hillary, I think, of waging a war on science, which, given the way Bush has mismanaged his other wars, result in more scientists. There's a joke about poisoned merit badges, or lead poisoned merit badges, being given out to Boy Scouts, and unfortunately one of those was a merit badge for eating the most merit badges. Convent fight, 2 nuns got him to fight over in a convent. When reached for comment, God himself said, "Ladies, please, there's enough meat to go around." A woman getting paid out for a sexual harassment suit over the New York Knicks. She would have gotten more out of the Knicks if she were a washed-up point guard with bad knees, which, even not knowing that much about sports of that time, that was pretty funny. And Amy's best jokes were about then 14-year-old Miley Cyrus's Hannah Montana tour being the best-selling concert tour in the country. The least popular being Yoda, Minnesota. New virtual colonoscopies. The hardest part of those is getting a computer in your butt. IKEA homes, where model homes built by IKEA, where you've never felt more nervous about having missing pegs. And the MTA in New York having cell service that time, if you call 911, by the time that goes through, Amy Poehler and her dance crew will be long gone. I'm sure I'm butchering many of those jokes, but here's something that I'm curious what you thought of. Daryl Hammond as Lou Dobbs, who was CNN's resident anti-immigrant pundit, who delivers an editorial on Canadian entertainers and producers like Seth Rogen and Lorne Michaels taking money, film roles, and valuable SNL hosting gigs away from American performers. Now, this was wonderfully deranged, and I loved how he played the sheer outrageousness of it completely straight. He seemed momentarily distracted by a rogue audience member without letting that throw him off.
Seth, it's a pleasure, Seth, but I'm afraid I'm pretty angry about what's going on.
Highlights for me include him saying, hosting SNL used to be the domain of upstanding American entertainers like Tom Hanks and Johnny Mosley. Now we got Lorne Michaels letting his Canadian buddy over the border to host, Seth Rogen. His basic premise is, why can't they buy American when it comes to host? Is it that hard? He suggests, here's some potential American celebrities to host. David Brenner, Hal Holbrook, Jill Eikenberry, a legitimate triple threat, and George Peppard, who has passed away, and quoting his own red-faced hotel bar rant that ended with him calling Seth Rogen an economic bin Laden.
Oh, yes, I love this. Love this so much. I'm very, very proud to be a Canadian. And as you know, us Canadians have very good sense of humor. Hell, Saturday Night Live was created by a Canadian. Whenever I hear stuff like this, I always think back to the documentary, The Canadian Conspiracy, produced by the CBC in 1986, where they're explaining that the Canadian government has for decades been training agents to take over the American entertainment industry. There's even a bit in there about Lorne Michaels. In 1968, Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau became incensed when the Canadian-controlled show The Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour, which Lorne was a writer on, was canceled due to a monologue by operative David Steinberg. Saturday Night Live was part of the conspiracy, including putting Paul Schaefer on Late Night with David Letterman. There's a lot of people who forget certain celebrities are Canadian, and we've had a long-standing history. Wayne and Schuster, which again has a Lorne connection because Lorne married
Rosie Schuster,
Wayne Schuster's daughter. Wayne and Schuster were like the comedy act, not only in Canada where they had their own series, they made the most appearances on this Ed Sullivan show. Wonderful Canadians like Martin Short. SCTV, also on Saturday Night Live. Oh, I did not know Edwin Newman was Canadian. No, I really did like the commentary on it. It is very true. We're kind of sneaking in there because Canada has the two hottest Ryans, as we know. Anytime they can have a little fun with Canada, I'm always behind it because I'm sure it's never meant in a mean way, because I'm pretty sure that Lorne wouldn't quite allow that.
Okay, and the next big commentary segment, the third ever really segment that Seth and Amy deliver on Senator Larry Craig's bathroom sex scandal, and got a slight allusion to this the previous week in the TV Funhouse Ambiguously Gay Duo cartoon. Seth and Amy do go a lot harder in the paint than Robert Smigel did somehow, and the audience is pretty hot for it. At one point, Seth says,
"You realize your job is senator and not lead singer of Wham."
He says, you're a Republican, so you're against gay marriage. What do you think? Marriage takes the sizzle out of it? Here's what really stood out to me. They were making fun of him for taking a wide stance on this issue. He spoke out against Senator Barty Frank when he was embroiled in a male prostitution scandal.
Really? I mean, at least he paid for it.
Now you're a Republican who likes dudes but hates capitalism. Seth mentions that he got Michael Vick's lawyer to defend him in his court case, which is a bad move.
You know who I might have hired? The lawyer who prosecuted Michael Vick. That guy's a good lawyer. I mean, really. Really.
I do like the neat coincidence of this. With that comment, Amy and Seth inadvertently tied this back to the first ever really from January 2007 about how Michael Vick should throw his weed away so he doesn't get caught with it at an airport, and also the angry dog ad from last week's episode. But it feels a little bit weird to be talking about any political scandals in Minneapolis, Minnesota right now.
I've always enjoyed really as a concept with both Seth and Amy, and eventually What's Seth by itself. Favorite one being the one he did with Kermit the Frog.
And then we get another commentary from New York Mets manager Willie Randolph, played by Keenan, and general manager Omar Minaya, played by Armisen. You don't really need to know much about American sports or baseball to know this. There's a common joke for years and years that the New York Mets suck. They're one of the worst baseball teams. This show's done it. Conan's done it. Jon Stewart's done it. This year, they didn't even make it into the playoffs. The manager and general manager can't come up with any ways to fix the situation or any positive message for the fans or anything to change to make sure they make it at least into the playoffs next year. So you just have Fred and Keenan fumfering. Well, this coming from Fred really seems reminiscent of his Nicholas Fane character, who would debut, I believe, in the next episode, and that's not necessarily a good thing, considering that particular Chet character's trajectory. Keenan just went ugh with a cross-eyed expression, and that reminded me of his OJ commentary for the previous week, and there was literally nothing else there, so I don't have anything to say about it.
Yeah, not much really.
We end Weekend Update on a cameo from their new/old senior political correspondent, Chevy Chase, who shows up and delivers an election report on the Democratic and Republican primary campaigns. He's even got his old gray off-white set, complete with a phone, and we hear him say, well, you're my son, I love you. If you're going blind, you are doing it right. And he says, I'm still, and you're still not.
That's the one thing that I found just absolutely hilarious.
And, say what you will about Chevy Chase, seemed the most in his element and the least ill at ease he's been on this show or really anywhere since season 1 of SNL. I'd say almost go as far to say he was downright charming by Chevy Chase standards only, and it was quite a fun novelty just to see an entire season 1, season 2, 1975-76 style Weekend Update nestled within a modern season 33, 07-08 update. Now feels almost as vintage to SNL as Chevy Chase update seemed at the time 18 years ago. He's actually pretty good here, surprisingly. Most of his jokes actually got laughs and work, except for the Bread Thompson pigs in a blanket joke that seemed almost like a random non sequitur, and he had a couple lines about Giuliani that bombed, especially the last joke comparing his and Hillary's poll numbers, which almost played to complete silence. Mostly a strong outing for Chevy and another fun throwback to season 1. I actually heard that at one point the plan for these Chevy Update election features was to make them a recurring segment throughout this season, which I'm sure the WGH strike and probably just Chevy being Chevy at some point kibosh on that, but I don't think I or the SNL audience in general at the time needed to see more of these that badly.
Yeah, so I think it went on a little long. I already mentioned the one line that I actually liked on it. Definitely shows the difference in the art style from back then to modern SNL. I kind of prefer current look of the update desk. I guess they couldn't really go far with the recurring thing because the strike and all the stuff that happened there.
Okay, and that's this episode of SNL, and I'd rate it just under LeBron's episode. This may not have been quite as strong as the season premiere, but it was mostly a pleasant surprise to go back and review, especially since I feel like season 33 was the year that I started to, not only did I discover Stooges reviews online, but I also started to sharpen up my critical thinking abilities when it came to this show and started flexing those brain muscles and developing my own opinions on what worked and what didn't about SNL at that time, and started to really want to get into doing what Stooge was doing with reviews. That's what's fun about going back and reviewing this whole season. Seth Rogen was a fine host who seems like he could have easily been a cast member in some alternate universe.
Oh, totally.
And Bill had a surprisingly great night, as did Will, Andy, Kristen, and Fred, which is no surprise in this era. They got a lot of screen time. The only thing that really brought this episode down for me is that a lot of it just didn't go anywhere. Cast and host elevate a lot of this episode with their performances, but the writing just kind of lays flat, and that made it a bit more challenging to review this episode, as a lot of these sketches really left me with almost nothing unique to say about them. It might not help that I've been working a new job lately with later hours and a longer commute, but I think all these are the main contributing factors to me having to watch and write about this episode in shifts rather than all at once. This isn't to say I didn't like this episode. It got off to a fairly strong start. A lack of creative energy started creeping in and settled in more toward the end of the show, but it was still, there was fun to be had.
Not the non-Bill bits just did too much for me. The biggest highlight for me was Bill as Animal. Not as good as the LeBron episode. Seth Rogen's first time hosting, pretty darn good. And I agree, he could have very well been a cast member. He gets even better in his next next episode next season. We are back next week to Documentary Now.
And we'll be doing the second episode of season 1, the drones episode, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, one of my absolute favorite episodes of the series. This is one of the ones where they don't quite do a direct homage to a specific documentary, more the documentary style of Vice. I won't spoil it too much right now, but the premise that they came up to the framework around this, absolute brilliance. That's all for us for now, and I am Deej Barrett, and will continue to be.
And I will still be Casey Killingsworth until I'm informed otherwise.
And as an ongoing project and light of my life, and a good part of your life, we heart hater.
We heart hater. It's what we do besides the Bartman.
Thank you for listening to We Heart Hater. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe and leave a rating and review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or wherever you get your podcasts. We Heart Hater is a presentation of Wacky Notion Productions. Created by Deej Barrett. Hosted by Deej Barrett and Casey Killingsworth. Recording and editing by Deej Barrett. Intro and outro music by Music Unlimited, used under Creative Commons license, courtesy of pixabay.com.